This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
When it comes to Belle Isle, there are a couple of things when it comes to mind. The tranquil beauty across the racetrack, the fountains, the landscape, the historical buildings. The other, which also just so happens to be an indicator of summer in the area, is race cars. Good afternoon and welcome to today's coverage of the Major Series European Splits Detroit Grand Prix, where we'll see two dual races, 35 laps each. The best drivers in all of the European splits try and gain points and battle on this very tight street circuit. I'm Justin Prince. I'll be joined shortly by Cam Walsh. Hugo Wees is in the director's seat for tonight's section, as it's going to be a very interesting day to say the very least. Two dual races, 35 laps in distance, all battling along this 14-turn, 2.35-mile circuit. Here's how they'll line up today. Via qualifying throughout the past week to try and secure the best positions, Marco Mogren will start on the pole today with Yor Velarde in second spot. Henry Bennett will start third with Christian Challenger, the points leader for the group, in the fourth position. Rounding out the top five is Tim Claessens with Christian Rose in sixth. Kirk runs seventh with Joshua Wolf in eighth. Rounding out the top 10, David E. Baker and Adam Fancy-Patti with Olson Walsh and Travis Henderson inside the dozen mark. Diego Jimenez Hormilia will start 13th with Sean Norden and Vincent Brem and Riley Thompson from 14th to 16th spots. Jamie Rushworth will start in 17th with Pete Harrod in 18th. In the 19th spot, Christopher Murnau with David H. Baker rounding out the top 20. Rounding out the field today, Lyndon Swaby in 21st, Cordell Colon in 22nd, Marcus Niskanen in 23rd position will start from the pit lane. Colin Martsoff will be in 24th after qualifying, while Jans-Francois Arsenault and Dean Moll round out the 26 drivers that made the top split. Officially, 3 drivers have elected to start today's first duel from the pit lane, and Fancy-Patti, Lyndon Swaby, along with Marcus Niskanen. But of course, this is a very challenging street circuit, not a lot of passing opportunities, a very tight racetrack, and one you see a lot of speeds carried for these Indy cars today. No caution flags expected. 15 incidents is the limit. The green flag is out. Marco Mogren leads them down to the turn 1. And Mogren off to a good start, as well as Yor Velarde. Christian Challenger already up to the third spot so far, as the majority of the field already single file as they charge their way into turn number 3. Already having some trouble though. This is already Joshua Wolf that is just slammed hard into the left side of the fence. He's already dropped to 10th and has already lost half of his weight and having trouble turning his car. This is after it looks like scrubbing against the fence coming after turn 4, it appeared. Joshua Wolf has dropped all the way to dead last. Here's the look of the replay. This was again after turn 3. And we talked a little bit about the difficulties of this racetrack, scrubbing against the fence after losing the back end traction and completely destroying the left side of the car. He does have a fast repair available. However, that could take him out of contention to battle for the win potentially for the first dual race. Fortunate luck for the Torque Freak racing machine here as the action continues on to the end of its first lap. Again, the distance today, 35 total laps. 90 total when combined. The second Duel's point of racing today. To make things interesting, there is a fast repair as talked about. 15 incident limit is available for the drivers, and there are no yellow flags. However, they will throw the full course yellow if the track is blocked at any certain point in the races this evening, as you follow along with Tim Claessens. Tim Claessens started 5th, is already dropped to the 6th position. He's trying to follow behind Christian Rose. Kurt Crum is right behind him for the time being. On top of that, it looks like a couple groups have already broken themselves apart with some gigantic gaps on the racetrack. This is Cordell Cologne that is in 16th position. This grouping has already lost 15 seconds to the race leaders, in part because of what happened to Joshua Wolf that checked up a lot of drivers in the second half of the course. Cologne with Grizzly Motorsports trying to gain some time on the circuit. On top of that, you have the drivers that started from the pit lane. Guys like Swaby along with Niskanen. Rushworth has also scored behind them for the time being. This is 21st and 22nd. Of course, they are taking a big risk starting from the pit lane, but already losing a lot of time. A couple drivers already pulled off. Shane Norton already a lap down, already having lengthy pit stops. David H. Baker, in fact, also having to use a fast repair just now in the number 33 machine, and is coming out of the pits after taking a tow. A couple drivers already seeing some attrition appears in the early portion of this race. In regards to David H. Baker, it was an incident on the first lap that helped slow down the drivers that started from the pit lane. For reference's sake, that was into war coming out of turn 9 and 10. Also trouble on your screen, Christian Rose has just lost control. Christian Rose was in 5th position. This was coming out of turn number 10. And this is a hard traction area. You see them entering here. This is going through the Auto Trader corners. Aiming for the sponsorship of the section. Losing traction a little bit right about here. And hitting the rumble strip on the left side that ends up spinning him around, just damaging the car. Significant damage, and he is just now in live action getting going. That is how much time he lost just finding a gap. So some tough breaks on the racetrack so far today as you look at Osman Walsh. Also battling along with David H. Baker, who is in 8th position for the time being. We've also just seen Marco Mogren have to come down the pit lane for severe damage. He was the race leader last time by. So Marco Mogren is now down the pit lane after he had trouble in the Firestone corner and smacking the right side of the wall. You see him now in the pit lane, all the way back to 21st position. And you're going to see right here, he was the race leader before this. And this was coming where the Firestone sponsorships are on the racetrack today, in this section right about here. You see losing the back end, bam, right to the rear side. Couple cars able to dodge, but Marco Mogren taken out of contention for the race win for duel number 1 all of a sudden. Pit lane also getting busy. Wolf is still down there. Vincent Brem is also rolling to the pit lane. And we're also seeing a couple other drivers that might join them. One of them, Adam Fancypati, was just slammed the DHL wall this time, approaching the Motor City Casino Bridge. That is number 84 machine that just smacked his whole left side suspension. A lot of incidents popping up all of a sudden here. It is a very tough road course, to say the least. It's very tight, very challenging. And we've seen it with both real-world drivers and, of course, with the virtual drivers on this racetrack. There's not a lot of runoff space. And this is something that is going to have to be adjusted upon, with something emphasized in the race meeting for today to proceed with caution and try and not force things, knowing there's the lack of the passing zones on this racetrack with how tight it can get. But the man that's up in the lead is Velarde's second spot, though, is your overall points leader for the whole season's event so far for the Major Series, Christian Challoner. Challenger last time by a 1:15.118. That is about a tenth slower than the race leader. Everyone else, though, catching up behind is quicker. Bennett, Claessens, and Crum are all gaining up, who were in the 1:14s last time by. You're looking on board now with Tim Claessens for the time being, as he tries to find his way around Henry Bennett. Bennett showed some great speed during the Indy 500, one of the last times we've seen the Indy cars for the major series. Claessens also showed some decent speed in that as well. Crum, remember, the man in fifth, with the guy who won the 2018 edition. Bennett nearly scraping the wall that time in the corner entry as they head into the Auto Trader corners, as Claessens looking hard, bumping against the roads. It's a very bumpy racetrack, mind you. These are public streets once the races are done, usually in the summertime in the month of June, within Detroit, in the Metro Detroit region. On top of it, it's a park along with the conservatory in this area, so that does factor into how the conditions are for this racetrack on this circuit as they go back past the start and finish line on lap 7 of 35. You can see on top of that the differences in the braking lines. Bennett a little bit more conservative. Claessens taking aggressive braking lines on the corner entry, but losing some time on the corner exits, trying to check up and avoid the back end of Bennett with how he's attacking some of the hardest braking zones as they pass over by one of the little rivers that lead to the lake. Let's look on board now with Kirk Crum. We talked about him a little bit so far. The Bombshell Motorsports Incorporated driver having a good season, 10th in the point standings overall so far, but he's yet to record a top 5. He's the only person, in fact, in the top 10 in points not to do so. But we have just had a crash for the 9th place car. Morneau has just crashed, heading into the Auto Trader zone, and it's becoming chaos. Two different cars bounced off the wall trying to check up Riley Thompson, Marco Mogren, all getting held up. Thompson also bounced off the wall in the checkup zone. But you see on the replay, Morneau looping it around, thought he had space. Instead, Thompson as well as Mogren both tapped the wall trying to avoid him. Mogren avoids damage, but Thompson did scrape his left side pod, as you've seen there. And that already brings Riley Thompson to the pit lane. An absolute chaos, to say the very least, on this racetrack for some of the drivers. We already have only 19 cars on the lead lap, with how many drivers have had to take a tow truck or a fast repair so far in this race. Drivers that haven't so far are the top 5, of course, for saying the very least. A bit of a lockup that time for Henry Bennett, but Tim Claessens gaining some more time. He was the fastest car on the racetrack last time. +1 for the race. The biggest mover, though, is the man in 11th spot on the racetrack. That is Colin Martzov. That has moved up +13 positions on the circuit to get inside the top 12. The next best is in 13th, and Jean-Francois Arsenault for the time being. The biggest droppers are basically a lot of the drivers who have had to take pit stops. Rose, Rem, Facipanti, Mogren, Norden, Baker amongst the biggest droppers so far in this one. You also have Wolf also involved in situations today. Facipanti already into the pit lane. Rushworth already off the racetrack once more. He had an early pit stop on the first lap of the event. We stay along with the lead group for the time being. Things are going to get dicey with traffic. Things are getting dicey, though, in a couple parts of the racetrack, because it looks like Cologne might have had a spin. Yes, indeed, this was in the Continental corner. If we can check this out, for 15th, this would have been a nearby. Once again, the leaders incoming, pardon me, in the first couple corners. Coldo Cologne has just caused more damage for himself in 15th position as we stick on screen with the 3rd position battle. You look at Cologne, you see there's no more left front wing and some back end damage. This again was right around the Continental Bridge. You see the spin where he ended up scraping the wall. And you see on top of that, that was after he had to dodge a second car. JC Cologne now without a front wing. And there's that spin. Trying to check which driver that was he was trying to dodge there. But it looks like a matter of a few different things happening at once for the driver that was at one point in 15th position. Become a survival race, to say the very least. Arsenal also has just ducked into the pit lane, by the way. But Kurt Krum is in the 5th position right now, having to be challenged by Walsh. Walsh is closed in a fair amount on the racetrack. Has been 2/10 quicker last time by. Was also up there in terms of the practice times. The only driver, in fact, hit the 1:12 range. So Walsh does have some speed in his machine. It's the matter of trying to make the pass. That time Walsh getting tight into the 842 machine. Losing a couple tenths that time down the straightaway as they go underneath the Motor City Casino Bridge and zoom their way around the fountain. Looks like something may happen, though, to Henry Bennett, because he has dropped from 3rd position to 7th on the racetrack. And it appears, yes, this was heading into the Corvette corner. That caused Henry Bennett the issue where he locked up the brakes after scraping, it looked like nearly scraping the side pod, which sent him off the racetrack and put him nose first into a tire barrier. Once again, this is Corvette entering the right before the Auto Trader corner, where you see the lockup, and bam, there goes the front nose cone. As you've seen, also damaged the left front and wing, and as he's struggling on the track, he just tank slapped his right side pod, in fact, in live timing because of how the damage is building up. It's a long way into the pit lane, to say the very least. Another top runner seeing attrition. Mind you, we still have 24 laps to go in this race. The lead, though, is closed up. Velarde, Challenger, Claessens, all within a couple car lengths as they pass by the front straightaway and head towards Chevrolet corner, the first turn of this 14-turn road course. As talked about, this is a public streets, but with the races here for the Detroit Grand Prix, each of the corners are sponsored. They have just exited, for example, out of the Cadillac corner. Then it goes through Lear right here. Then they go to Firestone, followed by Pure Michigan for the 2019 sponsorship grid on the racetrack. It's going all but about 4 or 5 of the corners are sponsored at this racetrack and have specific names tied to said sponsorships on this circuit. For example, again, Corvette is here for turn number 7. 8 and 9 are the Auto Trader corners. In part with the Auto Trader Bridge as they pass on by where the City of Windsor International Media Center is at, which was on the right side of the track. Then move their way through where some of the Continental sponsorships are to the American Axle and Manufacturing corner, before they round out the corners with the Mattel corner and head to turn number 14. Final on with that as Tim Claessens tries to reel in second spot, has actually lost a little bit of ground this time by dropping an extra 10th. Velarde has also found an extra gear, it appears, able to put himself back up to a higher mix of fuel potentially, and gained 6/10 last time by. The fastest car on the racetrack, though, was the man in 5th position at the back end of the train you're seeing in Walsh. Krum is also closed in after the lost time from Claessens. On board now with the Total Downforce Racing Europe machine. Walsh so far having a great season. And apparently for Osen Walsh, that is the middle name for him. For the UK and I regional driver. It's a story talked about actually during the last race. He's for the Major Series by Cam Walsh a little bit. But you're still following along. He's able to just run the corner, it looks like, better on the apex. But lap time, lost some more time trying to avoid the tight walls. Again, there's maybe enough room for maybe a car length and a half of a racing line technically when you consider things. You can go side by side technically, but it's hard to do. It's hard to do in some cases with the walls there at even 30 or 40 miles per hour. Think about it going at 160 miles an hour, or say 50 kilometers an hour for some of the street speed limits just across the river. Walsh nearly taking advantage of Crum overrunning the corner, can't do it. So Kurt Crum that time, it looked like turn number 3 ended up having a big lockup now going through the pure Michigan corner. But it looks like Crum is losing a lot of time all of a sudden. Walsh within his draft, looking for a chance to poke his nose underneath, look towards the right side, just can't get the run quite yet. Thing is, it's going to get interesting though, because they're slowly approaching lead traffic, the first of which will be Lyndon Swaby, who is a corner ahead of these drivers for the time being. Schauner dropping back for the time being. You look now at Swaby though, and Swaby is the last car on the lead lap. And he is now only a few seconds in front of where the leaders are. You've seen Swaby before cross the line. The leaders now cross the line now. That is how close the difference is, and getting closer now. On top of that, they're going to have to deal with Cologne that has not fixed his broken wing on the car. Clausen's trying to slipstream behind Schauner. Can't do anything yet on one of the best passing zones off for the day today. The track temp is cold today, so there is a little bit more grip potentially for some of these drivers and higher speeds than you might see. It was overcast throughout the past week or so. It was expected actually to rain throughout this weekend in real life. However, in the past couple days, the forecast shifted to sunshine in real life. Major corner cut though by Walsh. Looked like Walsh tried to get to the inside of Crum, but Crum didn't give him the space. Walsh had to lock up the brakes to avoid heading and sliding back up. Damaged the left front wing cone, however. Ozan Walsh having some damage now on his left side for a moment appeared. Might have been potential graphical, but you're going to see it one more time. Ends up hitting the right rear tire, trying to make the pass. Crum going defensive and just couldn't get anything done. So Walsh, it appears the damage is okay. The car is okay. Crum still holds on to 4th. The leaders, though, have caught right back up once again, though, because Velarde, back to saving, dropped 3 more tenths. We are having less than 19 laps, less than 20 rather, laps to go on the scoring pylon here today, as we now have just 14 cars on the lead lap because we've seen Swaby and Cologne both duck into the pit lane before getting themselves lapped on the racetrack. Seen as Clausen tries to fall a little bit tighter apex compared to the 2 teammates for Kinetic Racing up in front of him. Kinetic Racing staying a little bit more away from the curves. Clausen showing a bit more confidence in the 451 machine for Torque Freak Racing by being able to get much more tire to a lot of these rumble strips. He actually lost time in the final sector, however, as they worked their way around the fountain. Looked like Kurt Crum might have came into the pits. Yes, indeed. So Crum coming in. And this may be a scheduled pit stop for Bombshell Motorsports Incorporated. Believe, in fact, yes, indeed, because we do see there was the potential of fuel coming in. In real life, the fuel mileage was up to about 15-ish laps. So that appears to be the case. He's going to have to deal with a car that just wrecked in front of the pit exit, though. Arsenault blocking the racetrack right towards the Chevrolet Bridge. That is the car on the inside line. That is a destroyed Juan-Francois Arsenault. And no, that is not the pace car this time. Same kind of situation. So easy to do, actually, in iRacing and in real life. Came out of the pits cold. Tires spun them immediately hard left into the fence. And now Arsenault's day may be done. And he just had taken his pit stop in 14th position. But the leaders right now, Challenger, Clausen's, Walsh in the top, Velarde, Challenger, Clausen's inside the top 3. On top of that, they have Walsh that's at the back end of the grouping as Clausen's losing some time. Had a bobble once again coming out of turn number 2. Side by side with Walsh. Walsh outbreaks him as he takes the position this time through Cadillac. And take a look at this. It nearly happened what we seen to Arsenault to Clausen. A major drift and a bobble and a major save to be able to keep it away from the Chevrolet branding on the inside wall. The one that takes advantage, though, as you can guess, though, was Walsh. However, the position has been given on back in real action. Here's the onboard from Walsh on how he got that position in the first place. To be able to get side by side with Clausen's and be able to make the pass. However, Walsh was able to give it on back because moments later, we'll stick with this. This is going out of Firestone, I believe, yes. He ends up getting loose on the entry. Major save from him, but loses the spot on back. He is now into the pit lane after smoking his tires in real action. So Walsh is now in. Niskanen also coming in and out of the pits. He was one of the drivers who started from the pit lane. And for reference's sake, Crum has dropped to 7th after taking his pit stop. We're down to 11 cars on the lead lap. Just 11. But you can see some more of the drivers cycling through. Walsh only a 7.6 second pit stop. Again, this is a very quick track to have pit stops and a quick series for pit stops. Able to just jack them up on the tires, get the tires, add the fuel, go from there with the Indy car. But the lead is tight once again. Lap traffic has gone on through. They've gone on by the lap traffic, however, I should say, with Swaby. He is a teammate of these drivers that are in the top 2. Now the question becomes, when do they elect to pit with their drivers? 16 laps to go in dual race number 1 today for the Detroit Grand Prix. RaceBot TV and the iRacing Esports Network are glad to have you along with us here on Belle Isle this evening. Top 3 have elected to stay out this time by as they continue to stretch the strategy for the time being on the racetrack. Also should note that Dean Mull is now off the racetrack after having an incident appears to be 2 laps ago for him now. So we are down to a grand total of maybe at the most 20 cars on the racetrack, not including the drivers that may have the chance to come back out on the lane after they're done on the tow trucks. Velarde having a strong season, to say the very least, though, in the Major Series. 6 starts, 2 top 5s in the events he's been a part of this year. And is currently holding on station today as well. Looked strong in the IndyCar, in the Indianapolis 500 a few weeks ago. And is holding station right now. The man who won that race, however, under caution, Christian Challenger, still in second. Challenger, he is currently in a great position. Matthias Magnussen, the second place driver on the points, not in dual race number 1 today. For the points leader is Gabriel Ruse, as he has the chance to grow his lead for the kinetic era. Let's look on board with Christian Challenger again, a member actually of the eNASCAR Peak Antifreeze iRacing Series for JTG Daughtery Racing. And has been having a pretty good season there as well. The European-based driver. You can see just how much you have to try and finesse the gears on this racetrack today. Going from 6th quickly down to 1st. Trying to have to go through 1st through Auto Trader and having to finesse where do you go to 2nd, where can you go to 3rd to try and have those extra revs and extra RPMs. But a majority of these corners today, just one going to 1st gear cornering, because you have to go so slow in some cases, around maybe 60 to 70 to 80 miles an hour to get around the corners. If the top 3 stays out once more on the racetrack, 14 laps to go on the ticker. Top three are still separated by just 0.8 of a second for reference's sake so far. As Tim Clausen continues to be patient, he does have the fastest lap of the race overall so far as you look from his perspective from his helmet right now. And tries to go along behind as you look along as they blur on by some of the advertising boards here today. Clausen's nearly getting up to the back end gearbox this time, but Challenger having some good runs, just cannot get into position to make the pass. It's going to be curious how they might go having to do strategy here in this one here so far. Or if he does use strategy, should note Colin Martzoff has pit from 7th. Tim Clausen's coming in this time with Velarde. So the race leader in 3rd position go in, while Christian Challenger is going to try and stretch it one more lap and try and play some strategy here. So an interesting call here from the points leader to see if he can be able to get something to work in clean air. You're looking as Velarde gets up on the jacks. Again, the times today have been around 9 seconds to 7.8 seconds. 7.8 for Velarde. Clausen's 8.8 seconds. And ends up losing a little bit of time in the lane. Walsh also able to jump them, in fact, off the pit exit. So Osman Walsh moves up to net P3 on the racetrack for the time being. Crum to net P4. Here's the look from Walsh as he was able to zoom on by closely and actually got loose trying to get on by Clausen. Again, with this pit exit, we've seen it a little bit before. It goes right to where the exited line is out of turn 2. And Walsh learned that again there. Big checkup from Clausen to make sure he gave enough space to Walsh as he exited the pit lane. But the race leader in Challenger is into the lane this time by. The gap is about 27 seconds. The net window for drivers in the lane has been 28 seconds combined with the pit stops today. So this might be interesting for Challenger. He didn't really have the best of pushes out of the lane, but he is already out and away with the pit stop time at 8.5 seconds. Getting loose a bit on the exit. Here come the leaders, however. Is it enough? No. Velarde jumps him as well as Walsh. So new driver in 2nd position. Osman Walsh. Challenger drops to 3rd. Clausen stays in 4th. While Niskanen is working with Crum in 5th position. "12 laps to go on the racetrack as the incidents have all settled down on the racetrack for the time being. With Velarde now up by 0.6 of a second. However, Walsh is still within the draft, and Walsh, remember, was one of the fastest cars on the racetrack and was trying hard to battle for position before with Clausen's. Last time by, Walsh had a 1:15.5 as he's now trying to take a different line compared to the driver in front. Lap traffic is ahead. The 13th place car is the first they'll have to deal with in Hormelia. That could make things interesting until they can get to a long straightaway. There are 2 long straights you can really draft upon to try and have a chance at a dive bomb. Again through turn number 3 to Cadillac, and then turn number 7 heading to Corvette. Nowhere close right now with the leaders for the time being. Someone who is close though, Travis Henderson. He's working his way through the Continental corner and heading off towards turn number 12 of the racetrack. This is for 7th position with David E. Baker. David E. Baker having a heck of a race so far today, able to play some good defense, 17th in the standings, has already won an event this season, mind you, in this series, for the major series for the European split. As he ends up seeing the 0-6 move along to the side. Again, that's himself letting Travis Henderson on by this time. Henderson was in the 1:15s last time. Baker was in the 1:16s for reference's sake in time. Trying to go with the safer call, trying to get the points instead of try and battle with there only being 10 to go this time by for the leaders. Henderson's +5 since the drop of the green flag for reference's sake, so Henderson having a good, strong day as well for Grizzly Motorsports. Came in 12th in the points standings. Martsoff, meanwhile, his pit strategy did not work out the best for him. He's in 11th position. And he tried to go a couple laps earlier compared to the leaders, but now he's with Pete Herod. They are now the last cars on the lead lap by a decent bit. They're ahead now by at least a quarter of a mile, to say the very least. As Martsoff tries to play the defense, Martsoff still +13. That is now tied for the most positions gained with Morneau for the time being. He's in the 1:15.8 time reference's sake. Morneau is just a tenth slower last time by. Herod, though, the faster of the two cars in the grouping. He gained half a second last time by in the 4:05. .405 looking to try and break the slipstream this time, heading to turn number 3. Martsoff trying to play the outside line. Just out of the reach is still Herod for Mad Motorsports. Note what you may be noticing, though, on the left front wing you should see. One thing that could be affecting Herod's ability to pass here is a little bit of damage that's on the left front wing of the 12 machine, of the number 1 machine, I should say, in 12th position. It is pushed up a bit more compared to the right front nose, so that might affect his ability down the straights in the corner, or I should say the cornering ability, to try and get the job done to make this pass. Again, these are the last cars on the lead lap. You see how the effect is there. Herod nearly losing the car that time through Continental. Eight laps to go on the racetrack today. And the first duel of the event. Riley Thompson, though, has just crashed tonight. Riley Thompson has just had a big-time incident in the 58 machine. This was coming out of here. And you'll take a look right here as he rides to the right side of the racetrack. Has a big-time tire looseness. Believe that was on a gear shift, actually. That can happen with the Indy cars, where if you end up slamming the gap onto the pedal too hard in first gear, you can have a major amount of wheel spin, ends up slamming into the wall. Cologne, you're now looking at, who had to also deal with an incident of his own. He went off the ground, in fact, through Pure, Michigan. So two major incidents on the racetrack right now, but the race lead is down to under 0.3 of a second. Noir Velarde holding off Walsh for the time being, trying to battle for this first position for the first duel. Remember, after this, there's still a 35-lap race to go for this event, but 7 to go for the first duel at the time being. Velarde gaining some time as they head down the front straightaway once more. Velarde last time a 1:14.398. Pair that to 1:14.5 for Walsh as he has a moment out of turn 2, losing a bit more time. He gets tight through the dirty air this time. They do have the lap traffic of Swaby up in front, however. That could be a factor. Seven to go in the first duel for the Detroit Grand Prix for the Major Series' top European split. One of two splits currently underway today for the duels in Detroit today. For comparison's sake, P3 and P4, Christian Challenger is 5.4 seconds back. Kirk Crum has passed Tim Clausen's for 4th spot. He is, however, 13 seconds back. Clausen's is now 24 seconds back after he lost a significant amount of time again through the pit lane and then had 2 times in a row in the 1:24-second mark. That was after Clausen's first tapped the wall, it appears. That was a couple laps ago on lap 27 out of Corvette. And ended up hitting the right side out of Auto Trader. Then had a similar situation. He ended up coming into pit, taking his fast repair. And that's why he lost that position on the racetrack for comparison's sake, and why Clausen's is now in 5th position, way far back after having that major drop-off. That is why he is 5 seconds slower the past 2 times by, after having to take the fast repair after having damage coming into Auto Trader. You're looking now, though, at a man that could take advantage for a top 5 in Morneau. Moreau is still behind by just a second. However, he is also in the same ballpark in time compared to Clausen's now, since he's had to take his fast repair pit stop. The gear up machine trying to ride along, as you also ride along now with Henry Bennett. And Henry Bennett has to be thinking of what if, because he was also as high as the front, I should say in the top 5, before slamming into the wall nose first and damaging his front wing. Since then, it's been a recovery drive. Has actually lost positions on said recovery drive since then, trying to reel in David E. Baker. Last time we see Baker let Henderson on by because he is running the 116s, while everyone else behind him all the way to Marsoff is running in the 115s. But with 5 laps to go on the scoring pylon, it's the question of does he let him by this time and sacrifice a few more points on the racetrack in the 06 machine in the Knight Rider design sponsored car. And yes, he does. Bennett lets him on by on the right side of the racetrack. Baker, I should say, lets Bennett on by, as that moves Bennett up to 8th position. 4 laps to go now for the race leaders, however, as Velarde's grown his lead once more by 2/10 on the racetrack, for reference's sake, as you still following along now to that grouping. Velarde already stretching a quarter of a straightaway gap for the time being over Walsh. Challenger's in 3rd position, but Challenger's been trying to close in. He gained half a second on Walsh last time, as well as 3/10 on the race leader in total, while Clausen's was the fastest car on the racetrack. A 2-car scrap for the race lead for the time being. The question is there enough time? Walsh has pushed up his left front wing, however, it appears. So he does have to deal with a little bit of damage. That came just a few moments ago, you might have noticed. Coming out of Cadillac, where he ended up scrubbing the tire barrier on the corner exit, and is why that left front wing is now pushed up. So that's going to make it much more difficult to try and battle for this position. Once again, Walsh ended up scrubbing the tire barrier on the exit of Cadillac. For reference's sake, the last time by on his lap 32. That will affect the speed now to try and reel in the race leader. How much, in fact? He lost 4/10 last time by, as you see that damage from the onboard. It looks like, however, there's a car stopped at the bottom of the racetrack. That is Martsoff that is having to let people by on the entrance of turn number 3. That's because he is a lap down, and he's stopping on the racetrack with significant damage on the right side of his 405 car. And it looks like the Chiefs car, which is in reference to a movie in Hard Shot, or Slap Shot I should say, ended up slamming hard on the right side of the racetrack in the exit of turn 2. He is another victim of the bumps on the corner. On top of that, if we look back to where Walsh is at, you might notice, if we can look back on board to Walsh, this is pointed out by one of our viewers once again, that nose damage also affecting the toe. He is not turning the car straight right now. He's not going straight, I should say, down the straightaways. So the left side toe is knocked in with that contact with the tire barrier, so this is going to make it even more difficult to even hold on to second spot. Because Challenger is still, however, well, 2.2 seconds back, could have a shot if Walsh makes another mistake on the racetrack to try and move to second. 2 laps to go, though, in the first duel here in Detroit. Looking on board as Walsh moves his way through the course for the time being. But it's going to be a question of what if potentially for Walsh after getting the damage and bringing out the left front toe as well as damaging the wing. He bent the tire rod, it appears, physically, cosmetically. That can end up causing that mechanical / suspension damage along with that front wing. White flag coming out this time by for the race leader as Jorge Velarde crosses by the stripe. He's on his final lap. One to go for the 381 machine. He has led a majority of the laps so far today in the duel in Detroit for the Detroit Grand Prix. Question is, though, can he keep it up for the second race? But right now he's in a great position. Walsh is trying to make one last gasp of a charge after gaining 3/4 last time by. But might not be enough. Velarde working his way out of pure Michigan this time by. Velarde's had the pace, has taken advantage of clean air since the drop of the green flag, and able to take advantage of the mistakes of others as well. He'll be one of just 10 drivers to finish on the lead lap at the time of the checker flag, as Velarde will add himself some points. His teammate and challenger will still have a good points day for the first duel for the Detroit Grand Prix, but for Velarde, he'll have a couple more corners to get around through American Axle and Manufacturing. Down the front stretch he goes to checker flag. Jorge Velarde wins the first duel. Walsh comes away second, Challenger third. As the rest of the drivers cycle on by, in fourth position, it'll be Kurt Krum, with Tim Claessens, after a major mistake and being the fastest car at the time of the checker flag, dropping to fifth. Morneau, Henderson, and the rest of the grid now crossing the stripe. Just 10 drivers finished on the lead lap for the first duel here in Detroit, the Detroit Grand Prix. With that, let's take a look at your race results. These are again unofficial for the first duel here in Detroit, as Jorge Velarde takes the checker flag for the first duel here for the Detroit Grand Prix. Walsh came away in second spot after having some damage and having his car turning to the left down the straightaways. Came away 7/10 back of the race win. Challenger recovered to a 3.3 second gap after pitting a lap later than everyone else on the track. But Kurt Krum came away fourth. Claessens rounds out the top five. Morneau, Henderson, along with Bennett. David E. Baker crossing the stripe for ninth, while Pete Harrod comes away in 10th spot in live action. The drivers a lap down. Hormilia, Niskanen, Martzov, Wolf, along with Swaby, who's the first car 3 laps down. Passi Ponte, the leader for what appear, the leader for the sportsman class. Rough day in 16th position for the first one. Now Robbie Thompson, Cordell Colon, David H. Baker, and Marco Mogren round out the top 20. Also, who had rough days were Shane Norden, Christian Rose, along with Dean Moll, Jane Francois Arsenault, along with Vincent Brem, Jamie Rushworth. That ends off the first duel. Still 5 more laps to go for the second duel. We'll be back right after this. And these messages, you're watching the iRacing Esports Network and RaceSpot TV. We'll be back right after this.
this is Jim Beaver, voice of the Lucas Oil Off-Road Racing Series. Introducing Pro 2 and Pro 4 trucks on iRacing. Game on!
Team racing allows multiple iRacing members to team up and race together, just like in real-world endurance series. Teammates can share driving duties, spot for one another, or be a crew chief. Team racing is free both to join a team and to create one. Each teammate races on his or her own computer from wherever they want to. Your teammates can be anywhere in the world, and changing drivers mid-race is as easy as a click of a button. iRacing features team endurance events ranging from just a couple of hours to 24 hours in length. So, if you fancy taking part in an iRacing endurance race in the future, you can learn more about team racing on the teams page on the member website.
Assist to the front bumper, and he hits him again now. Ray Alfala into the outside wall.
He's going to pass nearly 3 cars down that front straightaway, and he's going to get them all done with. What amazing!
Lead to the inside goes Logan Cloudman is going to touch in. Pit crash sideways. What a save!
Look to the outside as Cronkite goes off. De Jong into second place.
Going for the switchback. Oh, pinpoint driving.
It's howling down to the inside.
There's contact though. Slide left to the racetrack. Chris Renner drives it back down underneath, and he takes that second spot right back. Joker goes to Garrett Lowe.
Garrett Lowe should take victory with all that contact. He's going to try and make the move around the outside the parabolica. That's not going to work, but he's going to try and get the cut back here. Get the run out the parabolica. That's beautifully done there. Michael Schumacher, there's a little bit of door banging as well.
Welcome back, everyone, to today's coverage on the iRacing Esports Network and RaceSpot TV of the Major Series European region. We're back for qualifying for the second dual race today here in beautiful Detroit for the Detroit Grand Prix on Belle Isle in Detroit, Michigan. I'm Justin Prince, and the director, Hugo Wees, will be joined shortly by Nolan Rempel along with Sleeping Beauty Cam Walsh for the second dual race. But we've seen a heck of a first race. A strong run to the victory lane circle for Jordo Velarde, and a chance to celebrate inside the fountain for winner's circle. The question is, who will get the chance to celebrate in the second race and try and record themselves some more points on the schedule and celebrate in that historic fountain today? Again, qualifying is underway here on this 14-turn, 2.35-mile circuit as things get interesting here on out. It's different weather conditions now. We've gone to mostly cloudy with a much hotter racetrack for the second dual race. 94 degrees Fahrenheit the track temp, 76 degrees Fahrenheit the air temp, with mostly cloudy skies in reference to how the weather shifted throughout the weekend's forecast for today. But the drivers trying to set their best times. One of the first ones, Christian Challenger, setting a time. He has moved up to second on the board as you're on board with him for now. He's dropped already to 5th position in qualifying. These drivers will have 4 laps for qualifying, 10 minutes to work with to try and determine where they'll start for the second dual race. Times have already picked up a lot compared to some of the other times. We see, of course, the race. There are 2 different packages essentially for the Indy cars for the Lars IR18. There's quali trim for the engine mapping, and there is race trim. Essentially, as you look on board, as he works his way now towards Sector 4 on the racetrack underneath the Auto Trader Bridge into the Auto Trader section of the racetrack. For comparison's sake, the top times in the European split for dual race number 1 was a 1:12.485. That was as the week is going on. That was set by Marco Malmgren, who currently has the provisional pole after a first lap. Challenger crossing the stripe this time. Records a 1:13.597. Pardon me, 1:13.614 rather. That is just enough to move him to 3rd position on the board for now. The times are going to change a lot as the drivers pick up speed, pick up a little heat on their tires, as well as gain some more time on the track. While others, such as Vincent Brem, you do not want to be like he just crashed in his now number 1 car, who is 11th on the board you see on the left side of your screen. Continue to keep track as the drivers can record their times again. Only 5 minutes, 22 seconds left on the board to record times. Walsh is up to provisional key number 2. And the thing is, when it comes to track temps, it is essentially, as talked about by Randy Chinnett during the Le Mans 24 hours, it's going to be a radar gun that tracks a specific part of the racetrack and the temperature of that part of said track. The temps are going to be different across the whole racetrack, however, because you've seen one section is bright and sunny right now, while another section is very cloudy. That'll affect how the drivers are able to attack the course for their respective laps. It'll also affect the speeds as well as the grip levels on that part of the track. In other words, you have clouds, you're in a good situation. Sun, you are going to have a very hot surface, potentially, depending on how sunny it was at that section. Walsh this time on his third lap doesn't record when he got an 0X, it appeared, from scraping one of the walls. So he'll have to try and charge even harder on his fourth lap. He is the second best once again, about half a tenth off the pole right now. Make it 3/4 tenth. On top of that, you have Christian Challenger that is now into the pit lane after putting the tow truck, it appears, after lap 3 of his attempts. He did attempt a fourth lap, however, he did crash past the pit lane exit after bumping the curves out on the exit of turn 2. Kirk Crum now on your screen. He is 5th on the board for the time being, and trying to come around for his third qualifying lap. A couple more turns to go for him across this racetrack as he works his way around the fountain. Now goes around turn number 12 underneath the Motor City Casino Bridge across the Moto sponsored section. The number 21 Bombshell Motorsports machine. Crossed the stripe this time, has one more left to spare in terms of time. However, he did drop a lot of time to a 1:14.637 for Crum. He's gotten worse every qualifying lap, while his competitors in some cases have gotten stronger each lap. However, Jarvo Larde, the winner of the last race, has only qualified 7th so far on the board. So a lot of the drivers are still into the garage area, but others are still recording some of their first times on the board. Henry Bennett slotting himself up to 9th on the pylon this time after having a no record time on his first attempt. It was a 1:13.697 for him, and he showed some good speed in the lead pack and was gaining at one point before that crash in the first dual race sent him to the quick repair center, and then eventually only recovered to a top 10 finish, the back half of the top 10. Bennett is one of many drivers still yet to finish their recorded times. The majority of the drivers on the track are in laps 3 or 4 of their attempts right now on the scoring pylon. Tim Claessens has just moved up to the pole, however, a 1:12.928 last time by for him. He's been knocked off the pole, however, on back by Marco Mogren on his last attempt. So we have Marco Mogren up to first once more. Tim Claessens, though, up to second. Mogren with a 1:12.869 on his last lap of his attempt to move up for the pole, while Bennett records a 1:13.9-ish. That still, however, is only good enough to stay in 9th position. Times will continue to switch around a little bit for the rest of the drivers, but right now the top couple drivers have already completed their attempts. And Mogren, Claessens, Walsh, as well as Morneau, who was able to qualify in 4th, Crum in 5th, while Challenger's out for practice laps. See Challenger recording those practice laps right now. He finished 3rd in the last race, is the points leader for the whole series coming into today, and is looking like he's trying to gain some more speed here now and try and prepare some practice laps. Again, it's a little bit of a different condition for the track. It's much hotter compared to last race. It was at 73 degrees Fahrenheit for a majority of the last duel, but this one going to be much more tougher. On top of that, you have Velarde, who won the last race. That is all the way in traffic this time in 8th position. Only recorded a 1:13.6. Compare that to his first dual qualifying attempt. That is at least 4/10 slower than what he was able to do throughout the week to prepare for the first duel. Couple moments left in qualifying. Let's bring in my partner, Sleeping Beauty. Cam Walsh joins us in the broadcast booth for the second duel race. Cam, wakey wakey, welcome to the second duel.
Thank you. I will say, it's not that I was really sleeping. It's more like...
Cam's going to have to work on some technical issues, unfortunately for him, so we'll have him as soon as we can here once again. But it's time for the grid. Either way, Marco Mogren, 2 races, 2 poles. Tim Clausen starts in second this time. Had some great speed in the first duel. Walsh will start third with Morneau rounding out the top 4 positions. But Bennett rounding out the top 5. Kurt Crum starts 6th. Christian Challoner in 7th. Travis Henderson, last race winner, Jar Velarde, drops his qualifying times from 2nd to 9th. David E. Baker rounds out the top 10. Joshua Worth will start in 11th. Vincent Brem in 12th. Cordell Cologne 13th. And Marcus Niskanen in 14th. Riley Thompson will be in 15th position. Amelia Swaby, Harad, and Arsenal round out the drivers' recorded times. The rest of the grid did not record laps in qualifying. Rushworth, Moll, Baker, along with Martzoff and Fassi-Ponti all did not record times. 24 drivers are set to take part in the second dual race here in Detroit. Again, it's a short pace lap. We are set up just about 3/4 of a way down the track before the green flag flies for today's dual race. Marco Mogren, again the pole sitter, set the tempo early on. However, he did crash in the early portion of the first dual race. Is looking to try and go from blurry to focused to try and have a chance on a second dual race opportunity. It's going to be an interesting one. Cam Walsh now joins us. Cam, it's going to be an interesting second race. Very different weather conditions here for this one. Much hotter racetrack compared to the first one where it was 73 degrees Fahrenheit. This one, 105 for the green flag.
Yes, first off, just making sure everything is all good. I sound normal.
Yes, indeed. You are normal.
Right.
You're not a RaceBot robot today.
Excellent. But yeah, no, it's Detroit. It's Dallara DW, or it's the IR18s, of course. It is, of course, race number 2. I will say, it wasn't that I had missed the first race because, I was sleeping. It's more like, I just don't like odd numbers. How about that?
Sure, let's go with that. It's going to be interesting, though. 35 laps again, 2.35 mile circuit. And we've seen a lot, and I mean a lot of incidents to be an understatement in the first half of the first duel. How will the second one go? Green flag waiting up at the stand for Marco Mogren. He leads them down as are underway for the second duel for the Detroit Grand Prix. And Tim Clausen's much more tighter this time compared to the first duel. However, everyone able to get by cleanly. However, it was in the second half of the course where the attrition came in. First dive bomb attempt is by Bennett as he loses a couple positions on the high side.
Yeah, and Christopher Moreau was able to get that inside line, and Kurt Crum was able to follow in past Henry Bennett, and it looks like everyone is nearly following single file, and Joshua Wolf back in position 10 or 11 is really wanting to hustle past João Valverde already as they're on the back stretch so soon here at the Detroit Grand Prix.
And one of the things when it comes to the Detroit Grand Prix, you look at Velarde in 9th, is it's tough to pass on this racetrack. There is not a lot of passing zones, and there's a lot of places where that can happen for Travis Henderson, who has crashed. Travis Henderson, the 8th place qualifier, has crashed in the Auto Trader section. That was after passing by another driver in Morrow who ended up damaging his front wing.
Yeah, and it looks like when he had taken the corner there, either he had a bump or he had a little bit too much throttle. It looks like he had a bump, and that threw the car right around. And unfortunately for him, he just really got a surprising amount of damage just by hitting that back wall. And then in order to turn it around, I think he had to rip off the front wing there.
And Morrow also again is coming in. He was the one who's being passed and started in 4th position, is already having to take his fast repair. Again, the incident limit today, 15 X's. 1 fast repair is available here. If you need it, there's a chance you might not be in contention for the race today. As you now look at 6th, with that major calamity, Velarde moved up 3 positions somehow.
Yeah, and I will say, speaking of 3 positions, Marco Morgan, Tim Claessens, and Oysen Walsh is really the first 3 cars have broken away. Surprisingly, I don't know if maybe that has something to do with Joao and whatnot at the start of this, but I will say if they're able to continue with this, we're just going to have a 3-horse race for the front unless somebody else is going to be able to really scooch through. But either way, I will say for Marco Morgren, he is able to build up just maybe a 5-car length lead after 3 laps.
The thing is, though, Cam, he crashed from the race lead early on in the last race. How difficult is it, even when you have clean air, to try and make sure you don't make a mistake? Because, mind you, there's not a lot of front-off area, and this is a street course with a lot of bumps.
It is, and it's a lovely street course, for the record. I absolutely love running around here, hot laps in pretty much any car. But yeah, anytime you're around, it is just one of those situations where any single action, like we saw with Travis Henderson, he didn't really do anything wrong. It was more like the car just bottomed out, the rear gave way, and around he went. And that can happen at any time. You can take a corner just a little bit too fast or a little bit too shallow and find yourself in the tire barriers as well.
On top of that, you see on board here, you might notice for the past couple seconds, Walsh with some wing damage and loses it. Also losing it is Crum in the middle of the apex. So 2 different cars spin. Crum able to get by cleanly, but did damage his wing as well.
That
might have been the wing.
No.
That might have been the wing that affected that corner, you think? Maybe?
Well, that corner, it's a very slow downshift type corner, and I think Kurt Crum actually spun his car. I thought maybe he had reacted to Oysen, but no, I think he downshift just too early, and it really sent the car around, and so we kind of had a dual pirouetting, as it were.
Yeah, the major chuck up there on top of that, to say the very least. But 6th position, let's look at that now. Christian Challenger, your series points leader, came away with the podium in the last race in 3rd position. This race is now trying to gain some time. He's holding off Joshua Wolf for the time being. Remember, Wolf is also looking to try and bounce back after his incident early on lap 1 of the first race.
Yeah, and it's a...
Oh, big crash for Martzov. One of the biggest movers in the first race has crashed out of Pure Michigan. He was in 17th position and was as high as 11th in the last race, but has completely destroyed his Dallara IR18.
Yeah, it looks like he spun on the wall, both sides, and that's exactly what happened. And I've seen that happen probably a dozen times. That is just you're getting on your throttle. You need to have a great corner exit, and as such, you really need to be confident on the throttle. And unfortunately for him, the rear end stepped out on him there, and he just the modulation wasn't there, and he spun it and crashed it right into the inside wall or the outside wall on the exit. That's going to be pretty much day done as far as that goes, because yes, he'll have the faster pair, but yeah, I don't think there's going to be a crowd for him to chase.
Yeah, indeed. So far, there's been less attrition compared to the first race, by an understatement. Last race, we had about 5, 10, 15-ish cars at some points that had to take a faster pair in the first 5, 10 laps. We're on lap 5 now with 30 laps to go overall in the Detroit Grand Prix. Racing looking clean for the time being as you look on with the battles from above. That is Velarde with Walsh. Now we head off towards where Niskanen is. He started from the pits last time in the dual race. This time, he's up to 11th spot after zooming on by Cologne.
Yeah, and trying to get around here is, in its own right, a massive challenge. You could just see Cordell Cologne was able to save the car, but he had lost it probably at least 2 or 3 different times in the corner exit there. You can see just how much movement these cars have as we're riding on board with Niskanen. You can see the cars getting a little bit smaller in the distance as Jamie Rushworth goes to the inside of Diego Jimenez Hormilia as he is going to be able to get that position going through corner number 1 there as he gets himself through. But the track is just, it's almost alive. You could take the same path 3 or 4 times as Cordell Cologne overshoots and he'll lose a position. You could take the same track 2 or 3 times, Justin, and every single time the car behaves differently.
Exactly, and especially at this kind of a track too, where it's a street circuit. with those types of bumps you have to adjust for, like there, where Cologne has to adjust to avoid hitting the wall and loses yet another spot. So he drops down to 14th. Should note that we have seen Team Mad's Pete Harrod have to come in and take his fast repair already after breaking the front part of his wing. That is the car that is currently towards the back end of the field. But we are just now down to 29 laps to go in the circuit. Very clean running so far for the drivers here for the second part of the Detroit Grand Prix. Marco Mogren currently in control by 1.4 seconds for Tim Clausen as you still look as Cologne struggles around the track.
Yeah, and actually, Diego Jimenez actually really threw the car late in front of him and kind of dive bombed, I guess is the best way to put it. And Cordell saw it coming, obviously, and they were able to maneuver around each other perfectly fine. But yeah, that Diego was able to go up one position there. And this kind of the second half of the field really seems to be split up. But that's not to say that everyone isn't close or anything like that. And I almost think Marco Morgan is going to have to start dealing with some lap traffic because of these the incidents and the fast repair and everything like that, which means that Marco Morgan is going to have to start dealing with lap traffic, as I think we might have our first retiree parked in pit lane.
Yes, indeed. Pete Harrod is now just ducked out of the race again. He was the driver who had to take a fast repair. On his first lap out, he crashed on his lap number 6 after hitting the rumble strips and knocking the whole front cone off. So Team Mad's car is also out. Travis Henderson still running. Dean Mole, Adam Fancy Potty amongst the drivers as well that have had struggles and have not either made the start or off the racetrack. Fourth place we go for the battle there. Velarde is charging and quick. He's not the fastest car on the track. However, he is right now setting a pace that is on par with the rest of the top 3.
Yeah, definitely, and he's got Henry Bennett in front of him, the 007 machine, so he's going to have to work quite quickly. He's got 4/10 that last lap on Bennett, and it looks to me like...
trouble, Joshua Wood, pardon me. Joshua Wood just bounced himself off the wall at a Firestone this time and completely sheared off the right side of his wing. So 2 straight races with wing damage in the early stages. This time it was out of Firestone. Let's look on board.
Yeah, and this happens so easily, and that tire barrier really does reach out and touch you, and I think you might actually have suspension damage as well from hitting that barrier, so we'll have to see if they can get that repaired. I have a feeling, yeah, because Josh hasn't come down this race, as he's going to come down. David Baker almost eats the rear wing of his machine, as Riley Thompson also had to slow up to get by, but Joshua Wolf is going to be able to get that machine back into pit lane and see if he can get that thing repaired.
I'm curious to see about that too at this point, to see how, if he can at least try and recover in this one. So we continue to work around the racetrack with 26 to go now in the Detroit Grand Prix. It is a one-stop race, we should note. We've seen it last time, where drivers pit as late as lap 22-ish on the racetrack and for fuel if they didn't have to go for the fast repair. So how do you feel this will work with strategy? Because we've seen the best drivers on the track were able to stretch it towards the end of this window, but the winner, of course, in Velarde, undercut drivers like Challenger by a full lap, where Challenger lost 3 seconds from the battle because of that overcut.
Yeah, and well, the track, it might seem short. After all, it is only 1 minute and 17 seconds, but it is 2.35 miles long. So don't think it isn't that impressive to be able to save the fuel. I'm watching the 06 machine right now of David Baker. He's getting hounded by Marcus Niskanen and Jamie Rushworth, actually. So this is a 3-car train, and this is actually going to lead into my next point here, because whenever that pit lane window does open, the pit lane entry is kind of on, well, the path of the track, because it's so short, because it's so narrow. You're going to have to get on the binders to get to pit lane in basically the line of the track. So that's going to be interesting as well, if, say, if Baker out of this group or Niskanen goes or whatnot, as we're watching Henry Bennett and João Delgado. We're on board with João as he's chasing down Henry. and it's looking like he's able to get close. We've been with him for a while, but he just can't seem to actually get the pass done.
And that's the thing, we've seen a lot of times drivers were able to gain 3/10 a lap, then would lose a couple tenths once they got within the dirty air. You hit upon a little bit before, it's going to be, you have to basically pressurize the driver, I think, to make a mistake in this race to make passes, because when you get trains like this, it's hard to actually make a move because there's not a lot of time. With
Riley Thompson.
Riley Thompson just had a crash, yes.
Yeah, he decided to eat the outside barrier on his own. Looks like he just carried too much speed in, wasn't able to get the car slowed down, and he crashed it, and he parked that right on the line, so he had to get that thing towed and out of there. So Riley Thompson's day appears done.
And this is the second straight Duel race that he's had some major significant issues. Again, he was running top 10 each time he's had the issues today, unfortunately for him. But the battle was focused back to Niskanen. It's now for 8th position because of the issue for Thompson, who is up to 7th. But David E. Baker has also lost his front wing in the mix of things, so Jamie Rushworth, his teammate, is going to be let on by here this time, as it looks like some struggles now for David E. Baker.
Yeah, and Vincent Bram is going to be a bit bummed out. He wasn't able to get by, but I will say the car on its own looks all right. It's not to say, just missing that one section is going to be a total ruiner of the machine, I guess. Obviously, the car is going to be slower. It's going to be worse in right-hand corners. You're not going to be able to catch the air, but I don't think it's going to be, it's not going to be 3, 4, 5, 6 seconds off of the pace. And for David, he's just going to have to see if he can ride around with it. And for Vincent Brem and Diego Jimenez, they're going to have to catch up, see what they can do.
And still following along with Jamie Rushworth as this goes on. And you look at the gear shifting too, again, how tough it is. You're going from 6th gear all the way down and quickly to first. A majority of the corners here, in fact, are having to be taken in 1st gear or 2nd gear in some cases, like Rushworth has been doing, because of how much you have to be off the throttle and try and brake and slow down to make sure you don't overrun these corners, with it only being essentially up to 2 car lengths wide and essentially 2 passenger car lengths wide.
Yeah, really, and it is 2 passenger car length wide with some crosswalk or with some sidewalking. But I think for me, one of the big things to remember here with how tight this racetrack is that your opportunities to attack the person in front of you, just when they come, you have to be assertive and you have to be aggressive. In order to do that, as I've been watching the duel between Gilles Valverde and Henry Bennett, and Henry has gotten quite a bit faster over the last 3-4 laps, but for Zhao, I think it's almost a matter of he just isn't able to get right up to the rear diffuser of that IR-18 and force Henry into a mistake, as there have actually been quite a few good duels and battles going around here. But just to kind of touch on your point, I don't think a lot of these drivers are used to slamming it into 1st gear, and that actually makes, I think, what we've been seeing with the cars losing the rear is that happens a lot when you over-rev going down the gears, and you just give too much force to those rear tires when you hit that down into 1st, and you're trying to get consistent gear shifts, and it's very tricky to do in a paddle shifter when it does as much as you want it to do.
Exactly. We now look at 15th and 16th for the time being, however, but hit on the nose right there. It's hard to try and make sure you hold on to things as it over-revs. On top of that, making sure once you get out of the corner, you're able to manage the tires and the cornering afterwards. But for Moreau, I should say, he is right now one of the drivers trying to recover from one of his fast repairs. There is that chance for drivers to try and recover, thankfully, with the fast repair. However, it does, while take you out of contention for the win, it does keep you on the racetrack with a chance to record points if you can avoid the wall again.
Well, and not just that, there almost forms a second race, as it were, with cars whom also have had to come in and take their faster pairs. A couple of cars are on pit lane. Vincent Brem is in his pit lane, and I'm not sure. I believe this is scheduled pit stop. No, it seems that he has a bit of right side damage that he was able to get fixed. So I think it's kind of the window is open and some damage.
Remember, the longest we've seen the leaders go was to about lap 22-ish. That is with about 13-ish to go. But we did see some major undercuts start around this time. Tim Claussens is going to try that right now because he lost a front wing. Tim Claussen smacked the wall going towards the pit entry.
Well, they'll have to get that replaced. As he pulls into his stall, he'll use the faster pair, so he has that going for him, but obviously you're never sure if that's the best decision to do. He goes out, and Gel Valverde also creamed the outside tire barriers and gave himself some pretty significant side pod damage, so he had to decide to come in instantly and get his faster pair done. I'm not sure. Lap 15, he should be able to make it for the rest of the way, I'm presuming. 15 laps, because it's after that you've got to run a 20-lap stint, which I think the fuel tank probably should be big enough for that with how they have them limited, Justin.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. But the thing is, though, it was mentioned actually by one of the bakers, it's also hard to try and fuel save on this track if you don't, say, add enough fuel or have to come in early and then have to try and hope to stretch it, like some of these teams may have to do, because he was a driver, one of the bakers, that dropped that was 2 seconds off the pace trying to save.
Yeah, and the maximum fuel tank you can have is 18.5. And how much fuel per lap, I'm not necessarily sure, but we do have it limited as to get you your that one pit stop, which I don't think anyone's going to be taking tires or anything like that on their pit stops. When we do get to that window, maybe when we start getting those final pit stops towards the lap 22, like you were saying, the time to fuel it up is going to match the time that it takes to change the tires. So you might see some of that, however.
It's going to be interesting to see that again, though. With these Indy cars, you can take the tires and not lose any time, of course, while taking the fuel. So this race continues on. The clouds, though, are starting to come over the track a little bit. Again, it's mostly cloudy skies. That was all over the skyline here in Windsor, Detroit, in real life in the past few days. Back to 8th and 9th now. We go to that battle. Marcus Niskanen trying to pull on away. However, he's also reeling in Tim Claussens again, who has already had to take a pit stop in this one. Jamie Rushworth is in front of them as well. The difference in pace between the drivers, for comparison's sake, Claussens still yet to record his first time, but Rushworth is in the 115s right now. David E. Baker in the 116s, similar to the pace that was in the last race, while we've seen Claussens run as high as the 114s today.
Yeah, and this is kind of your standard pack, as it were. Everyone is just far enough away where they're able to get the full effects of the downforce between Rushworth, Claussens, Niskanen, and Baker. And this 4-car train is probably going to start closing.
Oh, trouble in front of the leader. Cologne had to check, nearly caused trouble for Mogren. Cologne spun out right in front of the race leader, but Mogren was just able to squeeze on by. Take a look at this. And this was a scary moment. That is Mogren in the backdrop. This is again through one of the tightest sections of the track that you're about to see, where Mogren had to check up like crazy.
Yeah, and Cordell Cologne, he had already backed up a little bit in order to give himself space for spinning it around, and he was actually on the upswing, so that was great to see him being able to do that, and the leader got it by safely.
We have to go back a little bit more. This is again in Firestone. That happened, for reference's sake, right here. As you see him around, this is what I'm referring to in the scariness here, Cam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I did see that as well, but it was just one of those situations where the track is basically 1.5 cars wide, and, well, he managed to fit that car in that half gap.
That lost a little time for Mogren. However, Logren's actually been the class of the field in pace. 5 seconds up he is over Walsh. That's blistering pace for this type of racetrack. He's not shown much fall off, if any, in his pace. Every single lap's been in the 114s.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see that both, as Walsh comes in, so the 8:42 machine is coming in. This is going to be his scheduled pit stop lap 18. So this is going to be right just about halfway through the race, as he'll come in and he'll get himself, as Marcus Niskanen is absolutely totaled on in pit lane, so something has befallen him. But no, Austin Walsh is going to get his work done. He's going to get his tires, and he'll be out and away.
Morrow was also crashed just about 30 seconds ago for him. What happened to Niskanen, for reference's sake? Remember Firestone? It been an air victim for Niskanen's lap 17, where he completely sheared off the front nose. That is why he is in the pit lane, had to use the tow truck, it appears. 7th place and 8th place now on your screen, though. Rushworth, David E. Baker once more. They are two teammates. And again, we've seen David E. Baker try and chug along this racetrack, but remember, there was at one point a little bit of damage with one of the teammates before they had to get a little bit of the damage repaired for them on this racetrack, I believe. Yes, indeed,
yeah.
Pardon me.
Yeah, and it's just one of those situations where I don't think that the CQR Club cars are really in a situation where they're going to be, I don't want to say worried about racing against your teammate, but this is a pretty standard thing for them to be racing against each other, and I really think that they're going to let themselves race to the fullest, which is exactly what you want to see, as a couple of more cars are trickling into pit lane. Kurt Crum is coming down from 5th position, and that's going to send him well down the order. I will say Walsh did come out in, I think, 5th position, 6th position, so the entire pit window didn't really cost him too much for Walsh, and he's not going to have to really work through a lot of people to get back to where he was.
This was the strategy he played in the last race, however. He pit about 4, 5, 6-ish laps earlier than everyone else in the first duel compared to the leaders. The thing is, though, to be able to have a chance for the lead, remember the pit lane time, 28 seconds in the stall, about 8.5 seconds at the most at this point of the race, some teams at 7.8 seconds. He's going to need to close maybe 5 more seconds, Walsh has to. Compare that with a Crum cycled to where 56 back of the race leader. He won't even be in reaching distance, potentially, of even the top 3.
Yeah, and that's going to be near, I don't want to say disastrous, but, when you're running comfortably in second position with 4 or 5 seconds between you and 3rd position, it's not good at all. As we're going to replay here of Lyndon Swaby, and, well, that's an incident that I think we saw the Corvette pace car did that one year, actually. That's in the same corner. And you'll see just how the corner follows through. This is really the fast section of the racetrack, and yeah, you just lose that over that bump, over the Corvette pace car bump, I suppose.
And Swaby ends up having to go onto the tow truck after that severe damage. He was in 11th position before the incident. We're having to take the tow truck. The thing is, though, where that was, he's going to have to do it the whole way around the racetrack. That's at least 3-4 minutes lost minimum and a couple potential laps. Joshua Wolf also having to duck down to the pit lane this time by. Remember, he had some front wing damage. You look now at Henry Bennett. He's one of the drivers that have already gone for his stop, we should note. He is behind Velarde now on the pylon, though. Velarde now up by almost 2 seconds after their pit stalls.
Yeah, and Henry Bennett is kind of been cycled through just by the nature.
Yeah, he just pit this time by, for reference's sake, Cam.
Yeah.
But trouble, Velarde! Velarde spun in front of Bennett, smacks the wall on the inside, and completely shears off the left side of the wing. Trouble for Velarde.
It almost looks like he had started losing the car. It was a slow loss, and unfortunately he hit the grass Otherwise, he probably would have been able to stop the car. But yeah, he went pirouetting into the outside wall, and Henry Bennett went by and went, well, okay. For Zhao, that's very unfortunate. He was having a fantastic race, and that's going to really mess him up, and I think that's actually going to be a race done for him.
That's unfortunate for Valverde because he looked strong in the first duel race. And really, that was his first main mistake of the entire day when you think of it. And now he is done, potentially. Still has his faster pair, though, in his pocket, but he will be down in the order. However, one driver that is able to capitalize, look who's in the top 10 now, Hormelia. Well, Cologne has a chance to get into the top 10 if he can put some good laps together for Grizzly Motorsports.
Yeah, and it's been one of those situations where Cordell Cologne has lost the rear quite a couple of times, but for the most part, it is just if you're going to wreck early. I guess as Marcus Niskanen has come down pit lane, as well as Lyndon Swaby, and is in his car and out and away, so it's interesting to see how everything is working out. I do wonder, it is lap 23, when is Marco Mogren going to come in?
Yeah, it's going to get curious now because Mogren's strategy might be different compared to some of the others. Remember, Mogren crashed very early and finished in the mid-pack, basically, after crashing from the lead in the first duel. So he has the chance really to dictate the pace in terms of the pit window. The difference is, however, Cam, everyone was able to be bunched up and was able to see, okay, they're about to duck down right now, which allowed first and third and left second and challenger on the track. Mogren answers the question, decides to come in now. So this might get interesting for where the next drivers go. Remember, Walsh is already pit, Claessens is already pit, Rushworth has not. And the difference was 33 seconds before Mogren hit the cone.
Wonder if we can get that little check map thing up. As Marco, he just slid just a bit through his pit stall. Had to put it in reverse, but most of these IndyCar drivers are expecting that. As Walsh is just coming by the final corners right now. He's sweeping through the right-hander. He passes the start-finish line, and Marco Mogren is able to get out ahead, and that is that. So I will say the undercut, overcut doesn't work for Walsh, and Marco Mogren is able to not just continue to keep his lead, but I think he improved it even through the pit cycle.
Yeah, he's now up to 2.18 seconds. Make it under 2 seconds now as the time finalizes to 1.9 in total. Rushworth coming in this time by. Should note the driver who was in 9th after his stops in Joshua Wolf. Done for the day after he just crashed, going right by that pit exit out of turn number 2. But Mogren now has a chance to try and pull away. He's been the fastest car the entire day. He's been faster as much as 0.2 of a second the past few times around for Walsh. But here's what happened to the number 7 of Wolf.
Yeah, you can see the suspension gets loaded, and it's really actually the exact same incident that we saw, I believe it was Swaby. And yeah, it just bounces on that retaining wall. And I will say a little update on the number 381 of João Valverde, who retired quite a bit earlier. His wheel actually decided to fail on him, which is of course surprising, but technical difficulties do happen as we're watching Jimenez really try to hustle Jean-Francois Arsenault.
And that's already changed the cycle in a little bit. Cologne, by the way, is now in front of these guys for the position, which is what the focus is at. Arsenault is a lap down for the time being, a few seconds back. But Cologne's been able to move his way up to 9th. Well, in part, that's what happens even if you're not on the best of pace. If you can keep the car on the track and avoid getting some X's or damage, you have the chance to potentially finish with a good position.
Yeah, most definitely. And for Cordell Cologne, he's actually got a bit of a relief coming because Marco Mogren is coming behind Diego Hormelia, and what's going to happen here is Diego is at some point probably going to have to yield, which is going to allow Cordell to get a position, and actually he's going to allow that right now as Marco runs to the inside wall, and this is actually a great place to catch him lap traffic can really hinder you here at Detroit, and that was probably one of the smoothest places to do that. So hopefully Marco is going to be able to continue to get on by, and hopefully Walsh can too, because if anything happens with Marco, Walsh is going to be there to pick up.
Yeah, because they pulled away from Clausen's. Clausen's is like 6 seconds back from second spot, and almost 8 seconds back to where Marco Mogren is. That's how quick he's been. But you see Walsh now having to get on by. Walsh reached him at a potentially bad spot for a few moments and might have lost a few tenths. However, Amelia able to just move back to the inside, allow the outbraking by the lead lap car, and moves on by. Lost a tenth in total after getting stuck behind. He still has to get around Cologne. Mogren got by with ease, it appeared.
Yeah, and Morgan was able to get by on the stretch there. But that was actually a really good lap traffic allowances. They were both going the same speed. The car of Diego never actually slowed down. It was just more of moving to the outside to slow the car naturally by taking the longer track path. And that allowed Walsh the inside, which then became the outside for the corner, the preferred line for that corner, and they were able to go by.
Trouble, Cologne.
It's Cologne.
Cologne losing it right in front of Walsh. And another victim of turn number 2. Thankfully, though, it looked like there might have been no damage for Walsh. Cologne got the damage out of it on the back wing.
Yeah, I'm going to be surprised if Walsh doesn't have a little bit of damage, just because Cordell didn't actually touch the wall, which is impressive, but he picked up that rear wing damage when the IndyCar of Walsh was driving by. I think something clipped that, and I'm not sure if just how it clipped on Walsh's car is going to give him any damage or not, but yeah, just get along. Right here, you can see you have to react almost instantly, and there's nothing you can do other than hug that outside wall, and that's what he did, and he was able to get right on by as Cordell Cologne is actually spun again as he was working his way through, and that actually gave Marcus Niskanen some damage.
So things snowballing now for the driver in 11th place now on the track, and he still has to try and, if he decides to come in, get damage repaired with the new back wing. If he decides to pit, well, he might decide to now as he spins around again. Around goes some of the drivers, also passing by Kirk Crum. As this is going to get challenging, though, because around the corner is Jamie Rushworth. Enough time, though, to be able to get out of the way.
Yeah, and I will say the ability to spin that IndyCar isn't a easy skill to master, and he's been able to do it 4 times now. Yeah, we're gonna and that one hits the outside wall. As I was about to say, are we gonna go backwards into pit lane here? Can we get spin number 4? Yes, we can. So 4 for 4 as far as the recovery spins go. Unfortunately, there's no additional points for that, however.
As to be expected, comes into the pit lane since that is obviously a not good handling car without the back wing. But if we can go back to Walsh, he's now gotten some visual damage for the 842. And this is where it's going to get curious. Last race, Cam, he ended up having damage where he pushed in the tire rod on the left front wheel. If we can look at the cockpit view, we might be able to see if is that the potential case again, because remember, that was the area that might have hit that back wing.
Yeah, I think it either rode up that front wing, and I was kind of waiting onto seeing what would aspire from it. But if he hit that left, it almost looked like Cologne's car was uncontrollable in a sense of there might have been rear suspension damage, and the only way that would have happened, it would have been if Walsh's machine was able to really clock it a bit more harder than one would have thought, maybe with the side pod or something like that as he was driving by. But the Walsh machine does seem to be solid and planted. It's just going to be dealing with that the left front wing damage.
Yeah, you're looking on board with him, and you can tell he's actually a bit struggling right now with some of the corners. I noticed that on the first lap back, that just right after the contact, there was a little split on the nose cone on top of it that is not on the rest of the cars for comparison's sake. Then ended up getting that, I think, was scraping off of Corvette's wall, and it's gotten worse since then, obviously, handling. But Christian Challenger battling with Henry Bennett now for 4th.
Yeah, and Chalnier has just been able to work his way through slowly. He started in 7th, he's in 5th, but it's just been good car control and good car positioning as Diego Hermilia is a lap down from this group, so you can see him in the distance in the 22, but it is one of those situations where, for the most part, Henry Bennett has been basically on the defense almost all race long.
Yeah, and it's getting more and more defensive too because Challenger's been quicker than Bennett by 0.3 of a second last time. He is reeling it in. It's just a matter of can he get the pass done because he's still not within that range. It's about where 2.5 car lengths is where this is where it can get hard to reel them in even with the draft, with how short the straights can be.
Yeah, and it is 5 laps to go as Marcus Niskanen is cleared. He gets out of the way for these guys. He doesn't want to intrude on their race as Bennett and Chalnier are going to have a big fight as everyone else seems to be quite bubbled. Marco Morgren has got 2.8 seconds over Oysen Walsh, and Tim Claessens is about 13 seconds behind that, so this is really kind of your first battle, and the last battle on the lead lap is between Henry Bennett and Christian Chandler. And you got to say, I mean, to be able to defend this long that green 007 machine, that really you have to take the hat off to him because it is difficult to not let that pressure eat you.
Exactly. You can't let the pressure build in. Challenger trying to make Bennett eat some pressure. The question is, can Challenger avoid eating some of his own on the racetrack under 5 laps to go for the Detroit Grand Prix? With this battle for 4th position, this again is 14 seconds back of the race lead. Everyone's separated out by at least 6 seconds plus on the track. Other than that at the moment, though, as Mogren and Walsh are the fastest cars by a full second.
Yeah, and that's no surprise. They're up there for a reason, and it is going to be interesting to see who does get the fastest lap. Actually, that might be Marco Morgan. He just did 2 laps ago. He did a 1:13.8, and that is very quick. But actually, the last lap from Oysen Walsh was a 1:13.752. So these guys are dropping into the 1:13 bracket, and that is just lightning quick around a 2.35 mile racetrack.
Really quick, yes indeed, but also shows, well, a couple things. One, they're not trying to save fuel. 2, when there's less amount of fuel in the car for the Indy cars, the faster you will go. You see it a lot in Formula 1, you see it here again too, as the race continues on with under 4 laps to go on the scoring pylon. Now the question is going to be, though, can Bennett hold on? He actually was faster last time by when Challenger got in the dirty air. What do you think Bennett can do to try and keep on defending? Do you see him just hold station to try and make sure he just drives his own line, knowing what's happening in his relative? Or does he try to make some kind of adjustments, knowing Challenger might want to pounce for some extra points?
Honestly, I think at this it is almost just ignoring the mirrors, except for watching out for blatant dive bombs. The last thing you want to do is not react to a dive bomb and take your both selves out, instead of just letting the person trying to do the dive bomb kind of hit the outside tire barrier, which is typically what happens here at Detroit when people try to dive bomb. But for Henry Bennett, I don't change anything. They're running similar lap times, though Chalnier was 0.2 faster that last lap. They've been actually pretty similar, and what is important to note is that with how narrow this track is, you don't really have to do much to be a hardcore defensive-oriented driver. If you literally drive your line comfortably, you will be defending very efficiently.
And one of the things I've noticed, though, is Bennett looks very comfortable right now. Even though that he's in this 4th position, is not the fastest car, per se, on the racetrack. He's actually been fairly consistent, hasn't really made many mistakes. He's been able to keep his car clean for the second duel. The first one, however, of course, he did make that mistake that dropped him from the battle for the lead all the way to his overall finishing position in 9th. This race, it's been a near perfect race for Bennett.
Yeah, absolutely. And he has had not just one, but not just two, but 3 different drivers really nipping at the heels of his IR-18. And so for Bennett, it's been a very good and stalwart job, I think is the best term for the UKNI club driver. And I will say, if you are Christian Chandler, the time is getting near. You have to maneuver because we are on lap number 34.
Yes, indeed. Closing in on 1 to go. Marco Mogren approaching the white flag right now. The gap is 2.66 seconds. Walsh is within a straightaway of the race lead. However, it might not be enough time to say the very least, despite gaining 3/10 last time by. White flag coming out this time by for the race leaders as Mogren crosses the stripe. Challenger, however, wanted to try and dive, had to lock it up, then twist his wheel to make sure he didn't run over Bennett.
Which is exactly the kind of defense that you need to see. Don't bother reacting, and that is what's
And there's a major pileup. Just a major pileup just happened with Kurt Crum involved with his teammates. Kurt Crum for Bombshell Motorsports entering Corvette caused a big one. He was in 6th position. Also collected Marcus Niskanen along with Hormelia, who had to check up. So Hormelia, the biggest gainer, he is a lap down. However, a big mistake for Crum on the last lap of this race.
Yeah, and throughout this, Christian Chandler, I don't know if he made another lunge, but he is now 6-7 car lengths behind Henry Bennett as they are now on lap number 35, going through the first sector for the final time here as Henry Bennett is just really looking comfortable and planted. But Marco Morgren is going to be the victor of this race unless basically another lapped car comes out.
Marco Mogren coming around the final corners towards the checker flag. He'll win the second race for the Detroit Grand Prix. Mogren takes it by 3.62 seconds with the fastest lap of the race, a 1:13.7 at the stripe. Walsh in second, Klassen's third. The battle for 4th still intensifying. Through Continental they go. Challenger trying to dime in the corner, trying to get one last chance on Bennett as he has to check up off the racing line. Bennett tries to hold himself along the fountain. Can he keep the spot is the question. Challenger with the bit of the draft, trying to use a bit of the push to pass, cannot get it done. Bennett 4th, Challenger will come across the stripe in 5th.
Absolutely fantastic drive from Henry Bennett. I gotta say, I know that the drive of the race, as it would probably go to the drivers doing the fastest lap, but for Henry Bennett, we saw how many drivers were making mistakes as we're watching David Baker also locked behind another car. Unfortunately, there's just not enough space to really gap out as he'll park the car at the outside barrier after the checkered flag. But we saw, Justin, how many people were making mistakes on their own. So for Henry to have that pressure and not make any mistakes, I gotta say that's outside of just the raw speed portion. That is really my drive of the race.
I have to agree with you on that one for sure. As the last of the drivers cross the stripe, let's look at your unofficial race results for the second duel for the Detroit Grand Prix here for the Major Series European Split. Marco Mogren recovers from a big incident from the lead in the first race to dominate the second. He came across the stripe by 3.6 seconds over Osman Walsh, who dropped a full 9/10 on the last lap of the race. Tim Claessens came home and the final spot on the podium. Henry Bennett and Christian Challenger came away with top 5s. Jamie Rushforth finished in 6th. Rounding out the drivers that made the lead lap, David E. Baker and Kurt Crum. Diego Jimenez Hormelia recovered to 9th position, the first car a lap down, while Jean-Francois Arsenault came away in the 10th position. Cornell Cologne came away in 11th spot today, 2 laps down in the race at the checker flag. Len Swaby also 2 laps down, able to hold off David H. Baker at the stripe. Marcus Niskanen not going to be happy after that one, after the contact towards the last lap with a teammate. 14th overall on the board though. 5 laps down was Martzov in 15th position. Rest of the drivers not on track of the checker flag. Wolf, Valverde, I should say, along with Brem, along with Moreau, Travis Henderson, along with Riley Thompson, Pete Haran, and Dean Mull. Adam Ponte, we got the answer for his incident. Apparently, he did not make the track because he hit the incident limit in qualifying. I don't know how, but you can do it. Either way, we'll take a quick break on the iRacing Esports Network and RaceSpot TV. Post-race coverage coming up after these messages from beautiful Detroit, Michigan.
The most realistic online racing sim ever made. This is iRacing. Detailed laser scan tracks, fully dynamic real world cars, and over 50 series to choose from. 6 online world championships offering over $100,000 in annual prizes. This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
This is Jim Beaver, voice of the Lucas Oil Off-Road Racing Series. Introducing Pro 2 and Pro 4 trucks on iRacing. Game on!
Welcome back, everyone, to RaceSpot TV and the iRacing Esport Network's coverage of the major series in the European split. It's been an interesting Detroit Grand Prix, to say the very least, today. Some good racing, a lot of attrition, and in the end, we've seen two different winners be able to take the checker flag today. One of the drivers that was in the mix for both the races joins us here for post-race coverage here from Belle Isle. It's Dave/Osman Walsh. Of course, Osman, the middle name for Dave. But Dave, it was a heck of a race today. How was it today, in your opinion, to try and battle with two different weather conditions and, of course, damage, in, especially at the end of the first race and a little bit in the second?
Yeah, I didn't actually have damage in the second race.
Okay.
I don't know how. I didn't hit anything. I think I did. I spun out, and then I think rejoining, I was a bit of an idiot. I think I caused somebody else to spin out, but I'll have to look at the replay for that. But I'm pretty sure it was my fault. But from then on, I was just trying to catch Marco. And then obviously I was in a different strategy. I was splitting the race half and half instead of just filling the tank at the start. But that seemed to gain me time, but then I just couldn't catch Marco at the end. And in the first race, when I got the damage at the end, it didn't actually slow me down. It just offset the steering. Well, it did slow me down, but not too much. It just offset the steering. And then I went and hit the wall again and broke the front wing. And then that definitely slowed me down. But I just, luckily enough, had a big enough lead over third to keep second.
One of the things that looked like, at least up from the broadcast booth, Mr. Walsh, was the passing today. How difficult was it to try and set up passes and try and force others to make mistakes to be able to take positions away?
Yeah, I mean, I started 11th in the first race, so that was, getting through the field was pretty tough. I was just struggling to actually get a run on somebody to get the pass done, because I wanted to do it all in turn 3, because it's much safer there. That's pretty much where I did all my passing. I tried once on the back straight and almost wrecked it, so it was basically just trying to do it in turn 3, but then I don't think I was particularly good in 1 and 2, so I was not getting a very good run out of there. So it was just slowly waiting, and then I think I gained a good bit with the pit stop strategy in the first race, which was lucky, but yeah.
On top of that, it was not just with the passing, there was a lot of attrition today. Why do you feel that is with this tight racetrack?
I mean, it's just the walls are so close, and any mistake. I mean, I half spun twice in the first race and somehow didn't hit a wall or hit anyone else. And then I almost spun out 3 times and somehow didn't hit any walls. I was just incredibly lucky. I think Marco, who won the second race, I think he crashed in the first race. So it's just the walls are so close, and if you make one mistake, usually you're in the wall.
Yeah, with Marco, that was actually when he was in the race lead in the first race for him. But basically, we've seen some great competition today, to say the very least, here at the Major Series. Next run coming up in a few weeks. Your thoughts as we head towards the summer months for the Major Series and your position in terms of how you've been in the overall season?
Yeah, I've had a pretty inconsistent season. I've either done really good with top 5s and a win, or I've just crashed. So hopefully I can just get a bit of consistency. I think TDR, so my team, have got a pretty good chance for Eldora. We should have a pretty good setup for that, and then otherwise it's just see how it goes, see how I can do. I don't think I'm really in the championship anymore, though.
A lot that can happen, though. That's the thing. Anything can happen. But is there anyone you want to thank before we let you go here today?
Just everyone at TDR, and yeah, you got Mike for arranging the series, and you guys for the broadcast.
Thank you very much for the time. By the way, do you prefer us to call you Dave in the future or Osin?
It's Ushin. Use that. You just Ushin. Yes. So it's like Usheen. That's the name in iRacing. So I'd say just go with that, but I don't mind.
I just thought I would ask about that a little bit. We've seen that pop up a few weeks ago, but just wanted to clarify with that. But thank you very much for the time. That was Ocean Walsh that finished today in second for the second dual race. Cam, your final thoughts before we say goodbye.
It was a 35-lap race, but I feel like a lot of these drivers, it feels like it's a lot longer. Detroit, you can only be here for so long, because no matter what, this track reaches out and gets you, and we saw that a lot of times, and that just goes to show for Marco Morgan and Dave Walsh and Tim Claessens and Henry Bennett and pretty much everyone that really finished up front. Like, they really had the prime car control, and they were able to master the second race here at Detroit.
And you also had to give a shout out to not just the drivers today that took part in the top splits. There's also the second splits for these drivers where they were battling for points and positions as well. But for now, it's time to say goodbye here on the iRacing Esports Network and RaceSpot TV. There is still one more split of action to go. That will take place this evening. GSRC will have your coverage. But for Cam Walsh, for Hugo Ruiz, and the rest of our sponsors for today's coverage, I'm Justin Prince saying so long from beautiful Belle Isle. We will see you next time for the Major Series in just a couple of weeks. We'll see you then.